These are all the connections, references, and Easter eggs between zombies and the campaign. Let's go. We'll begin our journey where every game starts, at the main menu. Did you know that the sound that plays every time you boot up World at War is the same sound you'll hear if you can manage to survive at least one round of classic zombies? Although it's not direct part of the campaign, the whole atmosphere and feeling of World War II is still present throughout the entire menu, and I feel like it would definitely be wrong to not include that here. Now, actually getting into the campaign, the first mission, Semper Fi, opens up with a brutal scene of you and one of your American squad mates being tortured by the Japanese. The officer who stares you down in this opening segment will bear a strong resemblance to the original Takeo Masaki, who was introduced in Shi No Numa. This is because Treyarch really didn't expect zombies to blow up in popularity as much as it did, and instead of creating more new models for the game mode, they decided to reuse campaign models as the zombie characters and said, that'll work. And definitely expect to see a bit more of this as we go through World at War. Next, one of the American troops that comes to your rescue during the start of this mission is Sergeant Roebuck, a character that aids you through your journey throughout the American campaign from beginning to end. Roebuck was a dedicated soldier and a pretty useful companion to have for combat, and for his service to his country, he earned the exclusive privilege of appearing in a Black Ops 1 Zombies map in the Portrait in the Pentagon on 5. Before we continue the video, I do have to shout out my lovely Patreons. We have Brian Hahn, Person, Fat Lucky Potato, Icy Storm, B-Rad the Man, Giovanni Diaz, Mayall, G-Daddy Smackdown, Ford, Ty Milan, Henry Heiberg, Money Shot, One Up Gamer, Cyrus, and Zach White YouTube. Shout out to my Patreons, they are awesome and get videos early and access to my Discord chat where we can talk about how global warming is an entire scam made up by vampires to steal your blood. So if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, check out that link right down there below in the description. Back to the video. Another character that we get introduced to is Private Polanski, who was first introduced in the mission Little Resistance, and this is yet another loyal and dedicated soldier in the American campaign of World at War. And while he doesn't quite have his picture in the Pentagon, his appearance will forever be remembered as the model for the original Tank Dempsey. So after you storm the beach in Little Resistance, you're going to come across a few craters in the sand, and if you jump in these craters from right to left, you're going to hear this sound. Your screen will start shaking, and 4 statues will rise up from the ground and offer you a ray gun. The ray gun is a very powerful weapon and a huge asset throughout this campaign mission. Any Japanese that try to banzai charge you are gonna very quickly regret that decision when an ancient alien-looking weapon fires glowing green balls right at them. In Little Resistance, there was supposed to be a Japanese propaganda broadcast played through the speakers throughout the mission, specifically Tokyo Rose broadcast. For those who don't quite know, the Japanese used English-speaking women to read out propaganda in an effort to demoralize American troops in the Pacific. This propaganda made an effort to emphasize American losses and the difficulty they faced in the war. Although these broadcasts would have been really interesting to see implemented into the game, they unfortunately never made it in. Black Ops 1 made a reference to this, however, through the PM63. Once you put the PM63 into the back punch machine, it'll split out a dual-wield variant named Tokyo and Rose.
Can you feel their cries coming? Pick him up right now. He's been disarmed.
In the mission Hard Landing, your squad moves through a Japanese airfield and comes across a very unique looking bunker being defended by dozens upon dozens of Japanese soldiers. Once you take a moment to get a good look at the structure, you're probably going to immediately recognize it as the bunker in which Nocturne Toten takes place. The two buildings are not exactly the same, however. You'll notice that the campaign version is a lot more opened up and much less claustrophobic. And additionally, you can't access the floor right above spawn or go up the curved staircase. And of course, specific things such as writings on the wall, the gun cabinet, the mystery box are all absent. And the back section where you normally purchase the scoped Kar 98 is also completely opened up too. In Vendetta, if you pay close attention to the opening cutscene of the mission, you can hear a very small segment of the round change music from Zombies towards the end of the cinematic. Now, Vendetta revolves around Dmitri and Reznov attempting to assassinate a German official, General Heinrich Amsel. Although you'll only be interacting with Amsel from a distance, if you look closely at him in the mission, you'll notice that he shares the same model as the iconic Dr. Edward Richtofen, arguably one of the most important characters in the entirety of the zombie storyline. The second mission of World at War's Russian campaign takes us out of Stalingrad and finally into German territory. This mission starts with our protagonist, Dmitri, being rescued by his old pal Reznov and a new ally, Private Chernov. Chernov will aid you and Reznov through the rest of your advance into Germany, and you might have guessed it by now, if you look close enough, you'll see that he shares the same model as yet another beloved Zombies character, this time the drunk Russian Nikolai Belinsky. Now, this next one is very unlikely to be an intentional connection between campaign and zombies, but in the intro cutscene for Relentless, it's shown that soldiers suffered from heat exhaustion during the conflict in Peleliu. At a blistering 115 degrees Fahrenheit, this is the first mention of the number 115 in World at War, but it is likely nothing more than a coincidence. In the mission Ring of Steel, Dmitri and Reznov fight through the outskirts of Berlin. After a few minutes into this mission, the battle leads you and your allies into a partially destroyed asylum. This is the exact same asylum used for Verrückt, which was the second zombies map in World at War. The majority of the structure is the same, but the interior layout is noticeably different. There are lots of areas you can access in the zombies version of the structure that are not really accessible in the campaign, and vice versa. The atmosphere here is also completely different. The campaign version takes place in a city being ravaged by war. You constantly hear gunshots, tanks, soldiers yelling. It has a very action-packed atmosphere. Now, Verrückt, despite being set in the exact same building, has a completely different atmosphere. When you look outside Verrückt, all you see is a ruined, almost wasteland type of environment, with lots of fire and dead trees. The ambience provides a feeling of isolation and horror, which was not really present in the campaign. World at War also has an interesting series of collectibles known as death cards, which when found and picked up allowed the player to hop in a campaign mission with their friends and activate special cheats in accordance with the death card. In the mission Eviction, you can actually pick up a death card that lets you turn all enemy soldiers into undead soldiers. Surprisingly, the soldiers don't resemble the actual zombies we see in the official game mode, but rather they take on the appearance of charred corpses, like what you would see after you use a Molotov cocktail against an enemy. It would definitely be cool to see what these missions would be like if you're going up against actual zombies, but it is cool nonetheless. And technically you do get to see this, but much later on in Black Ops 3. The last thing we have for World at War is in The Heart of the Reich. The soundtrack that plays towards the end of the mission is an extended version of the round change music from Zombies. And my god, if this isn't one of the most badass moments in all this campaign, then I don't know what is.
We are in grave danger from the communists. Our freedom, our very way of life is at risk.
Dragovich, Kravchenko, Stein. These men must die.
Moving over to Black Ops 1, the main menu of this game is certainly deeply intertwined with the story of the game. Taking place in a CIA interrogation room, you are strapped to a chair and forced to listen to the demands of a mysterious voice. A voice you can connect to a silhouette, constantly watching down on you from above. If you make the bold choice to select the zombies game mode in the menu, the atmosphere and music will completely change. Your interrogator will go silent, and soon the only thing you'll see in the window is the unmistakable movement of a zombie. And just to add to the helpless atmosphere of the situation, Mason will no longer be able to break free from the chair. Operation 40 takes us to 1961 Cuba, as we try and fail to assassinate the Cuban Prime Minister Fidel Castro. Castro had a minor role in Black Ops 1, but he would end up making technically 2 appearances in Zombies. He is one of the 4 playable characters on the Zombies map 5, and although this next appearance never actually ended up happening, early development footage for Black Ops 2 shows portraits of Castro in the bar on the Zombies map town. In Valkura, one of the most iconic campaign missions in all of Call of Duty, Alex Mason allies with Viktor Reznov to escape the brutal Russian labor camp, encouraging their fellow inmates with an 8-step plan to achieve freedom.
This is step 1! Security! Now, we take Vorkuta! What is step 2? 3! 4! Unleash the horde! 5! Step 6. Wield the fist of iron! Step 7, comrades! Step 8, Reznov! Freedom! For you, Mason! Not for me! Reznov!
These steps would become well known in the Zombies community as the Easter egg steps for the Black Ops 2 map Origins.
Step 1. Secure the keys. Step 2. Ascend from darkness. Step 3. Rain fire. Step 4. Unleash the horde. Step 5. Skewer the winged beast. Step 6. Wield the fist of iron. Step 7. Raise hell. Step 8. Freedom.
But technically, a portion of them appeared before Black Ops 1 even released, as in Nocturne and Toten. Back in World at War, writing above the curved staircase would read, "You must ascend from darkness." Who knows if this was all intentional or not, but it is kinda cool to see it come full circle in a way. And throughout the mission, Reznov can be seen using an AK-47 as his weapon of choice during the escape. Unfortunately, Reznov meets a very tragic end, and this would technically be the last weapon he is ever seen using. However, it's not all bad, as Reznov's legacy is honored in the Black Ops 2 Zombies map Mob of the Dead, when the player acquires the AK-47. It can be pack-punched, and you'll receive a very special upgrade variant of it called Reznov's Revenge.
I'll take it and make real sure I put it to good use.
This is a really cool callback to a great character, but it would have also been pretty cool to see the Makarov make an appearance in Zombies and receive a very similar upgrade title, as this scene is just way too good to not acknowledge it.
Killing me will not stop Nova. I do not care about Nova. My name is Viktor Reznov. Oh, and I will have my revenge!
And also, during the assault on the armory in Valkura, if you look around, you can find multiple copies of a white book labeled Edward Richtofen, DG2, DG3. Now, I'm sure you all know who Edward Richtofen is by now, and the DG2 and the DG3 are, of course, referencing the Wunderwaffe. Even if you don't find these books in this specific mission, don't worry, you won't have to look hard to find them elsewhere in other missions. Every bookshelf in the entire game seems to have the exact same 4 books, and they even return in a number of missions throughout the Black Ops 2 campaign, which is kinda sad because it really detracts from what is otherwise a pretty cool little Easter egg. After escaping the prison, Alex Mason secures himself a meeting with the one and only President John F. Kennedy. Walking around the Pentagon, we also become acquainted with the Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara and a large number of Pentagon employees dressed in very formal attire. Kennedy and McNamara would later appear in the Zombies Map 5 along Fidel Castro and Richard Nixon. The CIA agents and the Pentagon employees would also reappear in Zombies in Call of the Dead, as distractions created by the VR-11 once you turn a zombie into an actual human again. And they also make a reappearance in Black Ops 2 survival maps as playable characters on Green Run and on Nuketown. Taking place in a Soviet Cosmodrome, Executive Order tasked us with stopping a Soviet rocket launch and tracking down the elusive Nikita Dragovich. Treyarch seemed to really love the setting of a Soviet Cosmodrome as it reappeared in both multiplayer and in Zombies. In Zombies, the setting was utilized for the map Ascension, my personal favorite, and unlike Nocturne Toten and Verrückt in World at War, Ascension does a really good job of distinguishing itself from its campaign counterpart through a vastly different layout of the playspace. I mean, just looking at the multiplayer campaign and the Zombies version, it seems like every version wants you to explore a different area. Also in Executive Order, there is a new faction introduced that bears kind of a alternate universe counterpart in the zombie storyline. The Ascension group in the Black Ops story were a group of Nazi scientists who worked with the Soviets after World War II to help them progress in the space race against the United States. In Zombies, they are pretty much the same, but in addition to working on spacecraft for the Soviets, they also played a part in developing weapons such as the Thundergun, Gerstdevice, along with very powerful beverages such as PhD Flopper and Stamina. Also introduced in Executive Order is Gregory Weaver, a character who works closely with Alex Mason's CIA handler, Jason Hudson, throughout the course of the game. Now, Weaver was an important character in Black Ops, but he seemed to completely disappear from the story in Black Ops 2 with no explanation. This, of course, was later acknowledged in Black Ops Cold War, where Weaver returns. Although he's not concerning himself with the pursuit of Perseus, while Woods and the rest of the group are, he is instead working with the truly interesting character Samantha Maxis. You know, the first main villain of the zombie storyline. Now, there is a lot of random multiverse jargon which explains why Samantha is now in the Black Ops storyline, but that's a topic for a different day. Weaver himself plays an important role in the zombie storyline of Cold War, but in recent Modern Warfare 3, he is confirmed to have died after the events of Forsaken, which explains his absence in Black Ops 2, and why he didn't help Mason and the others against Raul Menendez. A lot of people seem to know about being able to acquire the ray gun in the World at War mission Little Resistance. A seemingly less known fact is that on the Black Ops 1 mission Numbers, you can actually acquire the Thunder Gun. When the first combat sequence begins, if you destroy all of the Nova 6 canisters at the back of the level and hold the interact button on a nearby tape player, you'll find another tape player in the weapons room behind the refrigerator, and if you interact with that, you'll be offered a Thunder Gun. It is a bit tricky to get it right, but you'll definitely know when you've done everything correctly. It is a really cool Easter egg, but unfortunately, the Thunder Gun isn't quite nearly as effective as the ray gun was in the World at War campaign. The limited ammo is probably its biggest downfall here. In the mission WMD, you play as Agent Jason Hudson, and towards the end of the mission, you are locked in a room where Frederick Steiner shoots his shot and asks you to come exfiltrate him from Rebirth Island. By looking around the room, you can find some strange X-ray images of some kind of creature that looks almost like a human-dog hybrid. Considering the presence of Nova 6 in Frederick Steiner's research and experiments, it is most likely that these images depict a Nova Crawler, a special type of zombie that appears in Kino der Toten 5 and on Moon. Nova Crawlers themselves are infused with, wouldn't you believe it, you're never going to guess it, Nova 6, a chemical weapon that Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner plan to use in an attack against the United States. Although the gas doesn't seem to be as deadly in the zombies timeline, either that or the main cast have some special kind of immunity to it, but then that would also mean, Kennedy, McNamara, Nixon, and Castro have that immunity too. But really, not much is known about the origins of Nova Crawlers and zombies, but I'd say that they were either created sometime during the 1960s, during the resurgence of Nova 6 post-World War II, or they were created by the Germans during World War II, which would explain why the gas is so much weaker compared to the campaign version. But who's to say, because there are still tons of mysteries in zombies that are unexplained to this day. Also in WMD, a piece of intel can be found that details some lore about the Gorky Korolev Medical Company, or GKM, who are responsible for smuggling Nova 6 into North Vietnam. The company is shown to be registered in the name of Pavel Gorky, who was allegedly involved in some kind of massacre at Derice, as stated by the intel. This could be referring to the real-life Reese project, but it is likely a small nod towards zombies that a lot of players would just generally miss. And there's no need to think too much into this because the credibility of the intel is kinda questionable, especially considering this game has intel that states Mason and Hudson were assassinated by the CIA at the end of Black Ops 1. When going through the labs as Alex Mason in Rebirth, an alarm can be heard blaring throughout the facility. This specific alarm returned in Black Ops 3 in Revelations. It is the same noise you hear when a giant apothecon flies past the electric trap, which is just such a weirdly specific place for this alarm to return, but you really gotta have your stuff together if you're gonna catch that. Referencing the iconic Reznov scene in this mission, the Black Ops 3 Zombies map Gorod Krovi has a couple references to Viktor Reznov, likely due to Gorod Krovi and Reznov's first appearance both being in Stalingrad. First of all, if you go to the trial tombstones, you can find Vengeance is Mine, VR, written on a piece of wood near the left of the tombstones. Additionally, the official achievement you get for completing all solo trials in one game is titled Victorious Revenge, a clear reference to our favorite vengeance-fueled Russian. In the final mission for Black Ops 1, Redemption, all loose ends are wrapped up with Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner all being defeated. Their legacy is remembered much later on, however, as in Black Ops 4, the Zombies map Classified features a unique Pack-a-Punch camo with each of the characters' profiles, taken from pieces of intel collected throughout the campaign. As you near the end of Redemption, a unique piece of music will begin to play. This is the same music that can be heard when loading up Black Ops 1 version of Verrückt. I can't get over just how good this music is, perfect soundtrack to build up the final confrontation with Dragovich.
Because you must suffer as I have suffered.
Murder me for Corvisier.
In Pyrrhic Victory, Alex Mason and Jason Hudson fight alongside Jonas Savimbi, the eccentric leader of the UNITA, the National Union for Total Independence of Angola. The UNITA is referenced in Black Ops 2 Zombies with the alternate name of the map Buried, which is Resolution 1295. In real life, Resolution 1295 was a formal text adopted by the United Nations against Angola. It was to impose and strengthen sanctions against the country in the year 2000. The title of this mission, Pyrrhic Victory, is also the name of the main Easter egg quest in Forsaken from Black Ops Cold War Zombies. It's pretty likely that this was an intentional throwback. In the mission Old Wounds, a character from the first Black Ops makes a surprise return, Colonel Kravchenko. Colonel Kravchenko pops out of a tank during a Soviet attack in Afghanistan and is promptly interrogated and then either killed by Alex Mason or Frank Woods, depending on the player's actions. Now, considering Old Wounds takes place all the way in 1986, and Kravchenko was last seen in Payback, which takes place in 1968, you might be wondering, what was he doing in that 18-year time gap? Well, Black Ops Cold War Zombies actually gave us some answers. Kravchenko makes his debut in the zombie storyline during the ending cutscene of Firebase Z as the leader of the Omega Group, the antagonist faction of Cold War Zombies. We see him throughout the storyline from 1984 to 1985, but it abruptly ends in the zombies map Forsaken, when the entity known as the Forsaken is accidentally, whoopsies, Mob B, released. William Peck and Kravchenko are forced to hold off against a horde of zombies, while Peck accidentally shoots a gas line and causes a massive explosion. For most casual fans, it would appear as if Kravchenko died here, but it's likely he survived this incident, as a short piece of radio dialogue found on the map alludes to his appearance in Black Ops 2, which takes place just 2 years after Forsaken.
What, you afraid they'll demote you and cart you off to Afghanistan? You're gonna die, you absolute lunatic!
Nuketown Zombies is a remake of the original Black Ops 1 Nuketown, and as such, the mailboxes in front of the 2 houses that say Woods and Mason are still present, and can be found broken and lying on the ground. In Fallen Angel, right at the start of the mission, you can see 2 claw units that fight alongside you throughout the flooded grocery store. If you look at their names, you'll notice that one of them is named Brutus. It's not certain whether that this is an intentional reference or not, but this adorable 10-ton killing machine does share a name with one of the most iconic enemies of Mob of the Dead. On the zombies map Die Rise, you'll notice that some of the zombies are wearing military attire. This is specifically the attire of the SDC, or Strategic Defense Coalition. This was a military union founded in China by Tian Zhao in the wake of the Raul Menendez cyber attacks on China. They have a very interesting history in-game, as they were founded when China cut off their mineral trade to the United States, denying the United States vital resources and pitting the 2 global superpowers against each other. This officially started what is known as the Second Cold War. This new Cold War led General Tian Zhao to form the Strategic Defense Coalition to try and align Asia into one large military force in order to compete with the Western world. The 11 founding countries were China, Pakistan, Burma, North Korea, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, a bunch of stands, Mongolia, Nepal, and Bhutan. How do you pronounce half of this stuff? The original 11 countries agreed to join the military and political alliance for different reasons, but most joined due to the pressure put on them by China, fearing the possibility of being invaded. The implication here is interesting, as it seems Raul Menendez still exists or did exist in the zombies timeline before the events of Moon, and was orchestrating his master plan to turn the world's superpowers against each other. It's unknown if he or any of the other characters in Black Ops 2 are still alive during the events of Die Rise.
Rise and strike while they are down.
Throughout multiple levels in the campaign, you can find a heap of sticky notes on walls, and if you pay very close attention to them, you'll see that some of these sticky notes has the words "zombies are coming" written on it. Like Richtofen's journal, this is a frequently reused asset, which sadly detracts from the quality of what would have been another cool Easter egg. Raul Menendez himself is mentioned in a piece of intel in Black Ops Cold War. In the bonus game mode Onslaught, if you play Cartel, you can discover documents that detail a series of zombie attacks from the perspective of Menendez Sicarios. Raul Menendez himself is allegedly present during one of these attacks, meaning he has canonically seen a zombie, although with how confusing the Black Ops storyline has been for the last 5 years or so, it's really unclear what is and isn't canon in the original storyline. During the ending of Black Ops 2, with the whole Avenged Sevenfold concert segment, for a very split second, a zombie can be seen dancing on a balcony overlooking the club. It's very easy to miss, but it's still a very cool nod towards the best game mode in Call of Duty history.
You've got a new bit of hardware inside your head. It's called a direct neural interface, or DNI. All of this It's a simulation inside our minds.
Bioaugmentation has become commonplace throughout the developed world.
The sheer scale of this disaster has overwhelmed the authorities. Superstorms continue to hammer the region, hampering relief efforts.
In the mission Black Ops, during the ending fight sequence, there's an accolade the player can complete titled The Whites of Their Eyes, which you get from defending the escape pod with only a pistol. Black Ops 2 also had a similarly named achievement titled The Lights of Their Eyes, which you could get by pacifying 10 zombies with 1 EMP on any green run map. This naming scheme is a reference to a popular trope mostly seen in animation, where the scene will go pitch black and only the eyes of the characters are visible. The Whites of Their Eyes is also a reference to an order allegedly given by an American officer, William Prescott, at the Battle of Bunker Hill during the American Revolutionary War. The order went like this: don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes.
The increasing prevalence of drones and combat robots has significantly reduced the reliance on human infantry.
The third mission of Black Ops 3's campaign, In Darkness, opens up with the player and Jacob Hendricks about to deploy on their mission in Singapore. Hendricks can be seen eating a Dr. Monty chocolate bar, which implies that Dr. Monty from the zombie storyline didn't just stop at producing magical gobblegums and perks, he additionally went into the chocolate business as well.
So now the world knows it was a CIA black project that led to the disaster that killed over 300,000 people. Now do you believe me when I say Kane is keeping us in the dark?
In the mission Vengeance, if the player approaches this television set near the beginning of the mission, clockwork squares from the Dead Ops Arcade soundtrack can be heard. Although weirdly enough, if you restart the mission and try to hear it again, it will no longer play. In the mission Rise and Fall, if you take a sharp left at the beginning of the mission and walk along this platform instead of taking the stairs, you'll be able to find Samantha's teddy bear tucked away behind some giant spools of wire. And shortly after the introductory segment of Rise and Fall, the player is introduced to an interesting and rather unique type of enemy known as a Raps. These are metallic balls that zoom around and self-destruct near a target, spraying them with metal fragments if they haven't already been taken out by the initial blast. They do make an appearance in Zombies in two different forms. In Shadows of Evil, they appear with a grotesque and fleshly reskin, very creepy, and bear the title of Insanity Elements, or more commonly known as Meatballs. They will do the same thing as their campaign counterpart, roll around and zoom towards the player before exploding in close proximity in an attempt to take them out. The RAPSs also appear in Gorod Krovi during the final boss fight, this time more true to their original form. They function the exact same as in campaign and mainly serve as a distraction during the fight against Ultimus Nikolai.
How do we make sure his head stays straight?
I can adjust his meds remotely, which should help level him out. But we can't let him compromise our chance to grab Taylor.
It won't come to that, Kane. I'll make sure of it.
Demon Within is packed full of connections and references to zombies, the first of which you'll encounter very early on in the mission when you're attacked by direwolves. These large beasts have a small resemblance to hellhounds, just without the fire and demonic aspects, but even more so resemble the wolf spirit from Der Eisendrache. It's likely that they had the asset for the direwolves ready from the campaign and just made a small tweak here and there and used it again for zombies. But strangely enough, the Pack-a-Punch name for the dingo is actually the direwolf, which is either just one big coinkadink or an intentional nod towards the appearance of them in campaign. A little further into the mission, you'll be tasked with destroying a German tank. Now, upon first glance, there really isn't much going on with this tank, but after you destroy it, if you get up close and look at the front of it, you'll notice that it now bears a Group 935 logo. This is a very, very cool little Easter egg, and I'd argue that they put it in the most fitting mission with the whole World War II theme going on here. It just works. Lastly, for Demon Within, we got a 2-for-1 here. We got a bargain, as during the final segment of the mission, the player is put into a small house and forced to hold out against, wouldn't you believe it, zombies. Now, actual zombies here. This is arguably the biggest connection campaign and zombies have seen thus far, and despite the absurdity of the whole thing, it's very interesting to see Treyarch give some love to their side game mode like this. But if you walk around the little house where you fight off the zombies and take in the environment, you might notice that it seems quite familiar. This is because this house was reused in the zombies map Gorod Krovi as the building in which you access Pack-a-Punch. They changed some things up here and there, but if you look close enough, it becomes pretty obvious.
I am Dolos, mistress of deception and trickery.
All that remains is your
you
sacrifice.
Are more powerful than he.
Humanity has outstayed its welcome. The dead shall inherit the earth.
Now, one of the most odd and arguably forgotten features of Black Ops 3 was the Nightmare game mode. This game mode takes you through the different levels of the campaign, but replaces all humanoid enemies with zombies, and all the dialogue with narration from the main character, retelling the events of the story as we play through them. This was probably one of the most unique features in a Call of Duty game, but with an uninteresting narrative and average gameplay, the mode ultimately fell flat. The KN-44 is one of Black Ops 3's signature assault rifles, taking direct inspiration from the iconic AK-47. It actually shares a quality with the latter that you don't see discussed much or really at all. As mentioned previously, the AK-47, when pack-punched on Mob of the Dead, becomes Reznov's Revenge. The KN-44, when pack-punched, is given the title Anointed Avenger. Anointed means to rub and smear some oil all over something very sensually, but it also has another meaning, which is to choose someone as a successor to a position. The AK-47 was Reznov's Revenge, and the KN-44 is a successor of that position, appropriately titled the Anointed Avenger. A subtle callback to the campaign of Black Ops 1, and a reference that manages to span 3 Black Ops games. Very impressive, Treyarch. Kudos.
Fellow Americans, a nuclear conflict could well be mankind's last. We want to make this a more peaceful world.
5 days ago, we acquired intel. The Soviet agent Perseus is in play. If he's active, something big is gonna happen. Something that could shift the balance of the Cold War.
All right, Bell. We're going back to Vietnam. First time Perseus pinged our radar. It was late January, '68.
In the mission Fractured Jaw, the village occupied by the Viet Cong with the Soviet safe house is basically the same village shown in the spawn of Firebase Z, although slightly modified. While Firebase Z is a decent map, in all fairness, it did mark the beginning of Cold War's notorious recycling of assets and zombies, something that really wasn't a noticeable issue for quite some time. It was still done in previous games, but it never really stood out as much.
We'll infiltrate East Berlin via the U-Bahn. The ghost station on the other side of the wall has the access point we need. From there, we'll watch Kraus as he enters the city. Once Volkov shows his face, it's killer capture.
In Brick in the Wall, after scoping out the checkpoint area with Adler, you'll be sent in to enter a bar to meet a contact. If you walk up to the bar and pay close attention to the menu, you'll notice some pretty cool sketches of the Der Eisendrache dragons in the top corners. Now, towards the end of Brick in the Wall, you can enter a mechanic shop tucked away to the side of the level, and inside you can find a Gobblegum machine. Although it's missing some of its trademark features, such as the Dr. Monty logo, a dragon sculpture, and a couple other smaller details. Now, almost the entirety of the Brick in the Wall mission returned in the zombies map Mauer der Toten, with some parts of Mauer taking place on the Berlin Wall. It seems like they just added a bunch of destruction, perk machines, and a lot of the other things that go into creating a typical zombies map. It's kind of weird seeing Treyarch use an entire campaign level as a zombies map, as this was almost seen as a thing of the past before 2021.
The information from Volkov confirms our worst fears. Perseus smuggled a nuclear device through East Berlin.
We can't be certain of that yet.
In Red Light Green Light, within the giant Spetsnaz training facility, you and Woods enter through an old 80s arcade. This section of the map has tons of Easter eggs and references to older Treyarch games through all of the different retro arcade machines. One of these machines will have no title, but from its distinct imagery, you can see it's actually supposed to be a Dead Ops arcade machine, specifically Dead Ops Arcade 2 from Black Ops 3. Almost the entirety of Red Light Green Light returned in the Zombies map Forsaken, with some minor modifications to the visual appearance and playable area of the map. Again, it wasn't uncommon for most Zombies content to just consist of reused assets, which, although we got some decent levels out of it, we really didn't get to see the game live up to its full potential in the end.
Alright, I'll let Mason and Woods know that we're ready. They'll be handling this one.
In the side mission Operation Chaos, right at the start, you can find a gas station with some interesting products in stock. On the shelves, you'll see some of Dr. Monty's very own chocolate bars, and if you look just to the left of that, you'll see a poster for Double Tap Root Beer on a nearby cooler. Dr. Monty did have a hand in making both of these products, so it seems like he's been in the chocolate and soda business since the early 1980s.
Think, Bell. Perseus. Do you remember coming face to face with Perseus in Vietnam?
EKG is spiking.
In the mission Break On Through, if you take a very specific path throughout your first run of the mission, you'll stumble across something very interesting. When Adler first tells you to go right, do as he says. Go ahead and go right. Then, when he says that you heard Russian voices, go into the Viet Cong rat tunnel next to the Lenin statue. And within a minute, you'll be trapped in the dark fighting off hordes of zombies. Yeah, that's right. Zombies return in a Black Ops campaign once again. And this time, they are relentless. I mean, I can't imagine being trapped in a Viet Cong rat tunnel with zombies coming at you. Like, just being in an enclosed space like that's already terrifying. Now imagine you have zombies coming at you. And the only way for this segment of the mission to end is with you being overwhelmed and killed by the zombies in the cave. This is another awesome yet extremely direct zombies reference and campaign that I'm all for. It's little Easter eggs like this that I really think gave Call of Duty its identity back in the day and really made people fall in love with zombies. As mentioned prior, the zombie storyline as of Black Ops Cold War is heavily intertwined with the main campaign, bringing in characters and plot devices to build this new narrative in the aftermath of Black Ops 4's quote-unquote ending. As such, you can expect to see some campaign characters in nearly every zombies map here, either referenced through dialogue, intel, or straight up featured in cutscenes. Kravchenko and Weaver are the most prominent campaign characters in this new zombie storyline. I, for one, am not a huge fan of them mixing campaign and zombies together too much. I kind of liked when they were all separate, but that's just me.
The Soviet Union is no more, despite a potential for instability and chaos. These events clearly serve our national interest. Free from the specter of global conflict.
Today we celebrate the mystery of American renewal.
Alex Mason gave up everything he had.
Because you must suffer as I have suffered.
Hey, something you should see. What the hell are we getting into?
The black site holding Adler is secured by retinal scan. We won't have access. At least not anymore. We have an opportunity, though, if we move fast. This Saturday night, the station is hosting a political event.
In the mission Most Wanted, once you finish ogling sexy Bill Clinton, if you head over to the dance floor of the function and pay attention to the music, you Shadows of Evil fans might immediately recognize the song playing as Snakeskin Boots. This song is probably the most iconic track to come from the map, and potentially the whole of Black Ops 3. I mean, come on, it's an absolute banger. I do have to say, this is a really cool little Easter egg. Unexpected, totally out of left field, but still cool. Emergence is probably the most infamous mission of Black Ops 6, as it has Case falling down an elevator shaft and being exposed to gas, which Treyarch saw as the ultimate opportunity to have our mysterious protagonist see and fight off not only zombies, but some bosses such as abominations and mimics. I also want to note that during the fight against the Joint Projects Director, an instrumental of 115 can be heard, which is pretty badass. While these nods towards zombies are great and all, I feel like the novelty of actually having the player fight zombies in the campaign has kinda worn off, and I personally prefer just small Easter eggs and nods towards the game mode. Like throughout the campaign, you can find this specific hat, and I'm fairly certain it's meant to be the Shadowman's hat from Black Ops 3. Now, I could be wrong, but little things like this are what I personally prefer to see in the campaign over entire missions dedicated to zombies. It makes zombies feel just a little bit more mysterious, like it did back in the old days.
I just can't wrap my head around this. The motivation. She was a patriot. Followed in her parents' footsteps. They were both CIA too. They were her inspiration. Believed in the mission. She never let them down.
The second mind-bending mission of Black Ops 6 campaign, Separation Anxiety, features an exploration of the mind of Jane Harrow, as her past is explored, to some degree. But you're not here for critique of the story, you're here for zombie connections. And thankfully, you won't have to look hard on this mission to find one, as right after taking control, if you walk forward a bit, you can find a car that plays the iconic Love Song for a Dead Man. This song most of you will recognize as the transit loading screen song from Black Ops 2. And I can't put my finger on it, but this is such an iconic song, and to me, it really sells the atmosphere of transit before you even get into the map. Unfortunately, this is really the last notable connection between the campaign and zombies in Black Ops 6, that we know of, so far. I imagine the rest of the DLC cycle might bring some more nods towards the game or more Easter eggs that could be uncovered as time goes on, but sadly, that's all I got for you right now.